What's up, Geeks and Gamers? It's Odin coming back with a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw Creed 3, once again, where have we heard this story before, have a franchise record opening weekend, making $58 million when the original projections had the film closer to around $40 million, so definitely overperforming in various ways. But will this film actually be able to do what Ant-Man was not able to do, which is hold and retain the audience from week 1 to week 2? This is the reason why opening week numbers is a similar reason as to why the Friday to Friday drop-off percentage is also a bit of fool's gold, because it doesn't always give you the complete story. It's the reason why also you should ignore things like CinemaScore, which is a complete another joke, very similar to, Rotten Tomatoes scores as well, because ultimately all that really matters is, okay, are people going to see this film, and are people going to see this film consistently, repeat viewings, and all these other things that go into it that people honestly don't ever account for. And so they can have that headline all about the film being the highest grossing of the franchise, and indeed, even when you adjust for inflation, you do see numbers that are very much similar to that. At the end of the day, though, the big question is, will this film actually be able to hold up next weekend, whereas Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania was not? So we'll talk about that. Also, we'll talk about the global box office, as it has made over $100 million already after its opening weekend. So at this point, especially after this opening, if the film has a decent drop-off, has a standard, little above 50% drop-off next weekend, then you could probably expect the film to break even based off of its production budget. But that still, of course, remains to be seen. And we will continue, of course, to do our full box office breakdown for the entire weekend. So before we go any further, though, again, please make sure you smash that like button and wherever it is you're watching. Thank you again for being here. Let's go ahead and dive into these numbers, though. Creed 3, $58.6 million at over 4,000 screens. Very good per theater ratio there of 14,000 per screen. One thing I wanted to do, though, is to talk about this film a little bit more into more full and proper context. And so one of the things that I like to do is talk about what the actual ticket sales, and how they compare to what we have seen in previous years. And so just for a bit of, again, putting things on a bit of a, kind of an even playing field. If you look at the opening weekend numbers for films like Creed 2015 and Creed 2 from 2018, and you adjust those numbers for inflation, you're looking at both of those films being around $37.9 and $43 million opening, respectively. So for this film to be at $58 million is pretty impressive. Those are definitely large gains there. Now, when you go to the ticket sales, you also see something that is pretty interesting, right? You see an actual increase in ticket sales opening weekend between Creed 1 and Creed 2, and you also see, of course, this bigger increase of almost about 2.3 million tickets compared to those other films. Now, one thing that I do have to point out, and was very true also when I talked about this in regards to Ant-Man, even though we also saw very similar numbers as far as the overall number of tickets being sold being a lot more, and of course the big number that was ran with was that $106 million number, we have to keep in mind that the average ticket price for these individual films are going to be different than what the average film would have been. Now, the average ticket price for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is going to be a lot higher than the average ticket price for Creed 3, seeing that Ant-Man has all the 3D showings in addition to all the premium format screens as well. So Creed 3 definitely has the premium format screens going on, and so I would say the vast majority of the tickets that are being sold for this movie probably are in IMAX or D-Box or whatever it is, the premium formatting is going to be, because people are much more likely to spend their money on that kind of an experience. We've seen this kind of consistently, especially when it comes to bigger films. You see a lot fewer people going to see these films in regular 2D auditoriums, and a lot more people spending a more premium ticket because they want to get the best experience they can. If they're going to spend money to go out of their house and to go watch a movie in theaters and not wait for it to come out on streaming, that is ultimately what you see happening. And so we do indeed have these numbers here, but take these with a grain of salt, because even with the first and the second Creed films, these films probably did not sell as many tickets as is being stated here, because they did also likely have some premium screens that it got released in. Looking into the numbers as well, according to thenumbers.com, just to kind of give some further context here, when you look at the actual, or rather you look at the raw numbers here, when you use their adjusted for inflation calculator, something interesting happens, right? And one, you have this very marginal increase between Creed 1 and Creed 2 when you adjust for inflation, but then also you see that there is indeed an increase here. Now, what I find interesting especially is the fact that when you actually go to the first Friday to first Sunday numbers, what I find very intriguing by all of this is the fact that the numbers actually seem to show that Creed 2 and Creed 3 are a little bit closer. So I don't know if that is an error on their part. If I switch it over to the actuals, let me see if these actually match up. So it looks like it was probably an error on their part because they're having Creed 2 as having made $56 million, whereas here it says it was 35. So, again, also too, for the first weekend, it says 42, unadjusted for inflation for the first Creed film. So whether or not these are the numbers that are incorrect or not, or if these are the numbers that are not including the first Thursday, which doesn't make any sense because the first Friday would include all of that. Regardless, it does show, though, that the story, as far as this being the highest grossing opening weekend, the biggest opening weekend of the franchise, I think there's definitely some question marks left. Either question marks for the numbers.com and how they've broken down their numbers, or, other things. So again, I'm just going based off of what was here in the chart. But if it's actually these numbers, then you start to realize, Creed 3 actually probably isn't the highest grossing. But I'll do some further research into that. Check out my video over at OMB Reviews a little bit later, depending on when this video goes live, and I'll try to have had some more research done on the differences between those films. Talk about some of the other films that have come out. Obviously, Creed at the top of the list. Ant-Man Quantumania is still in the top 3 films. However, not by all that much. As you can see, week 1 to week 2 drop was 70%. Week 2 to week 3, 61%. This film is dropping like a light. The film actually was very close to losing to Cocaine Bear's second weekend, which made another $11 million, only dropping 53%. So, yeah, not a very good look for a Marvel film this far out. Just only 3 weeks out from its initial release, already getting close to, by next weekend, being in the single digits. Yeah. Not very good. I would not be surprised if the daily numbers for the week start to become a really bad story. And I'll do a full breakdown comparing Ant-Man to the other Ant-Man films and how those daily numbers compare because, let's just say the numbers here indicate this could be the lowest grossing film of the entire Ant-Man franchise. You add to that the fact that tickets cost a lot more today, and you're seeing so many fewer people going to see this film versus not only the other Ant-Man films, but also kind of a bad sign for the MCU going forward as well. Cocaine Bear is hanging around, 53% drop, so not a terrible drop, but not also a great hold either. I've heard a lot of mixed things about the film. $11 million for that movie. Demon Slayer, which is a new release, coming out to $10 million, so pretty impressive, especially when you look at that per theater ratio there. This film, of course, having been released in other areas, and again, I know a lot of people are pretty big fans of Demon Slayer and of the anime. Jesus Revolution also made the top 5 this week with $8.6 million, another 46% drop only after 2 weeks of release. They actually added screens to it, so clearly it is doing pretty well, and I can make some projections when it comes to that movie and also a couple other films too that also saw their second weekend numbers get released as well. Avatar: Way of Water also hanging around, but this film has no chance of catching up to, as I said last weekend, has no chance of catching up to the likes of Top Gun Maverick's domestic totals. Going into the numbers a little bit, again, $100 million worldwide for Creed 3, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania at $419.4 million. Yeah, $500 million is definitely a possibility at this point in time, but that's a bit of a stretch. With these kind of drops that we're seeing, it's showing us that people have just no interest in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and it could actually even be a further indication that people are losing interest in the MCU, as every single film since Doctor Strange, especially this, last year going into this year, has just seen, so much less money being brought in, and it's been, very methodical in certain respects. Cocaine Bear is at $52 million worldwide. Demon Slayer at $22 million, again with a staggered release. Jesus Revolution at $30.5 million there. We also had another new release in Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre. Probably mispronouncing that terribly. This is a Guy Ritchie film. I'm actually excited to go see this film. However, it did get released a little bit earlier in other countries, so I can't really make a lot of projections on this other than it's not looking great as far as the chances of this film making its money back, but it is what it is at this point in time. Going into the charting, because we like to do some box office charting here, of course, we can make some projections for Cocaine Bear. So with Cocaine Bears making $52 million this weekend, projecting it to make somewhere between $74 and $100 million when all is said and done. Jesus Revolution, $43 to $61 million when all is said and done. What that means compared to their break-evens or their potential break-evens is that Cocaine Bear is likely going to make its money back. Again, anywhere from -3 to +14. I think that it's trending in a direction where it's definitely going to make a little bit of money, but I would say it's definitely not going to be the a big moneymaker that it probably was, expecting, or they were probably expecting it to be in the process. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Jesus Revolution, I should say first, is expected to make 3.6 to 14. So this film is definitely doing a lot better because it costs a lot less. Its break even is a lot less too. This film's looking like it's going to be able to break even and make some money back. You also have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which is still 48 million in the red. And even though there is a chance for this film to be able to break even, let's just say that it's not a very good one. And again, that's only if you're going with a very conservative $500 million number there. And I know some people's number for the break even for the movie is actually closer to 600. So either the film is, again, at best going to, see if I can get this error message out of the way, is at best going to barely break even, and at worst is going to end up being maybe a $50 million plus flop, whichever it is that you, again, whatever system that it is that you use is ultimately going to determine those points. And so those are the box office numbers as they currently stand. Where are y'all thoughts on this? Again, let me know in the comments section down below. And again, if you want a much larger box office breakdown going into the Ant-Man numbers and trying to figure out exactly what's going on with Creed numbers, doing some cross-referencing there, because I think that's going to be a pretty important thing. Let me know your thoughts about that. And also, do you think that Creed, with the biggest opening weekend of the franchise, is going to end up being the biggest moneymaker for them? And or do you think that this is actually a kind of a fool's gold sign, similar to what we saw with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania? I personally did not like Creed 3. I thought Creed 2 was bad. I thought this film was worse. It just was long, boring, and pointless. And when you don't have Rocky, there was very much a void missing, and that was the heart that Rocky brings to these films, and missing that completely, and then having things happen to the character especially, and Rocky not being a part of those events is just really downright, silly. And when you realize that the reason why Rocky's not in the film is mostly because of disagreements that he had with the producers and the direction that they were going with the story, you kind of understand why I have the issues with the story that I end up having. So let me know your thoughts about this. And anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. And again, smash that like button, whatever it is that you're watching. Thank you again. Support us over at geeksandgamers.com. Support us also over at Locals as well. You guys are great. Have a wonderful rest of your blessed Sunday, a blessed rest of your Lent. And as always, God bless.